Jon Jones has officially retired. Dana White confirmed it in the press conference after the Azerbaijan card. The announcement was also interesting. He didn't read it off at the beginning like he sometimes does with big news. The announcement happened about 10 minutes into his press conference after he was asked about the heavyweight belt situation. It's an interesting way to announce something this big, but it seems that he doesn't want to make a whole big deal out of it. Maybe he had something else planned about how to announce it, but he had to have assumed that he was going to be asked about it during this press conference, right?
Heavyweight division take the title away from him.
Jon Jones called us last night and retired. Jon Jones is officially retired. Tom Aspinall is the heavyweight champion of the UFC.
It was pretty obvious this was coming after some of the events of the past week, I would say. It kicked off with Dana White's appearance on the Jim Rome show. He was asked about how long it would be before we had an answer on what's next for Jones and Aspinall. And Dana White has said that in a couple weeks and he'll have the answer for us. But his confidence didn't seem as high as it once was. He would always answer this question as if this fight was 100% going to happen. But now he had said that if they weren't able to work something out with Jones, then they would move on quickly.
So if, for instance, he doesn't fight this guy, who would you like to see him fight? Or are you going to wait until he fights this guy?
I don't know. We'll see how this thing plays out over the next couple weeks. But yeah, if we can't get this fight done, we'll move on quickly.
Then Jones made an appearance on the Full Send podcast. And the Full Send podcast is the Nelk Boys, Dana White's buddies, for those of you who don't know. And on this podcast, he did what he always does when asked about Aspinall. He answered the questions by listing off his own accomplishments and how long he's been doing this for and just dancing around the questions. Now, the main conspiracy around why this fight wasn't getting announced was because apparently the UFC is negotiating a new TV deal and they wanted to have this Jones-Aspinall fight in their back pocket during negotiations. Jones had also mentioned in this interview that he's a company man and he's just doing what they're telling him. So perhaps he was doing them a favor by just prolonging this process even though both these parties knew all along that this fight wasn't happening. Because as much hate as Jon Jones is going to get, and he should, I think a larger part of the criticism should be placed on Dana White and the UFC. I understand that I'm not the one negotiating with Jones, but how hard can it be to make a deal before you finally decide, okay, this fight isn't happening? You offer him a date and place, and you meet the offer of money that he wants. And you want to know what? You add some more money on top of whatever he wants. Dana White can take a break from gambling for a couple weekends, and looking at some of these pay-per-views coming up, it's clear that not a lot of money is being spent on these main cards or the promotion. Offer him all of those things and give him 3 to 5 days to answer, and if he accepts, then you announce the fight right away. I don't care how far away it is. It seems like the UFC only wants to announce big fights as it gets closer to the date, which makes no sense to me. But you announce the fight when he accepts it, or if he doesn't, then you just move on. And this is something that should have happened months ago. You cannot let this thing drag out as long as it has dragged out, just for you to end up not even making the fight. And I understand not wanting to move on from Jones, considering the state of the heavyweight division, but at least you would have direction. You have an entertaining heavyweight who can be the face of British MMA, and of course, it would be the best for the UFC and Aspinall if he were able to fight and defeat Jones, but not if it's going to drag out like this. And you could have taken the belt off of Jones and told him that he can return whenever he wants. Nobody's going to stop him from doing that. If he wants to fight Aspinall a year from now, it's not like there's going to be a line of heavyweight contenders and the fans are going to be upset if Jones is the one that gets a title shot right away. Going back to Jones' appearance on the Full Send podcast, he was answering questions about the fight. He was asked about Aspinall once again and what it would take for him to fight Tom, and that was enough for him to end the interview right there.
What would it take to fight Tom Aspinall from the UFC? What does the UFC got to do?
Said something real wild on off the cuff. I'll see you guys later.
That's it.
Yeah,
right.
Thanks for the happy
Jon Jones, the legend.
Yeah.
I knew from Dana's lack of confidence in the fight happening and Jones' podcast appearance that this fight wasn't going to happen. I was optimistic at first, thinking that the UFC was going to offer him so much money that he wasn't going to be able to say no. But it's clear he doesn't even want to risk the loss. and he's willing to say no to a tremendous amount of money, which I'm assuming the UFC did offer him. So what is next for Tom Aspinall? Dana White said that he's already the undisputed champion, but who should he fight next? Whoever he fights next, to be honest, does not matter to me. Just make sure it happens quick. I don't care if it's anyone out of Gane, Volkov, or Almeida. It is most likely going to be Gane, and I'm sure that Jones will be watching that fight hoping Tom loses so he can say how he beat that guy easily in the first round and, Tom lost to him. But regardless, Tom's next fight should be soon. And by soon, I mean UFC 318 or 319. I understand both of those cards have main events, but both of those cards are weak. An Aspinall versus Gane co-main event would help both of those cards. I don't care if it means that Tom's not the main event, but he needs to fight as soon as possible, and I'm sure he wants to do the same thing. I'm curious as to what Jones will say in his next public appearance. It appears that he won't bring up the money, because I'm sure Dana White will say that they did offer him what he was looking for. It's probably going to be the same answers we have gotten from him all along about how long he's been doing this, and Tom needs to go be great without trying to attach himself to his name. But I don't think he can badmouth the UFC, because then they will just say their truth about how dealings went and why the fight fell through. Dana White has still not degraded Jon Jones. In this press conference, all he said was that Jones called him and said he's retired. On the Jim Rome show, he talked about how Jones has never turned down a fight. And I think it most likely has to do with him constantly praising Jones beforehand, and if he were to turn around and degrade him now, then all these old clips would be shoved back in his face. And he'd be asked, you knew all these things, why did you let this whole thing drag out for so long? So it seems like Dana White won't be giving us much intel as to why this fight didn't happen, or one of his rants, unless Jones comes out first, blaming the UFC. Of course, Jones returning will still be talked about. If you are happy about Jones being stripped and not having to hear about him again, then I have some bad news for you. Every time Aspinall wins a fight, Jones' return will be talked about, and he'll probably go on one of his drunken tweeting sprees, causing the discussion to once again focus on Jones versus Aspinall. This retirement and how it was handled and how it was officially announced was odd. I don't see Jones getting a tribute at the next UFC event. Next week at UFC 317, does anybody think that Jones is going to get a video package? Maybe I'm wrong and he does, but I just don't see it happening. Why Jones didn't just announce his retirement in the cage after beating Stipe is also odd to me. Maybe he was certain that the UFC wasn't going to meet his demands. He wanted to make it look like that he's ready to fight, but the UFC just isn't ready to give him what he wants. Why Jones himself didn't just vacate the title earlier also confuses me. Because it's clear he doesn't like answering questions about Aspinall. Well, if you're the current heavyweight champion, then of course you're going to get asked about the number one contender. The whole handling of this situation has been odd to me on all parties. Jones, Dana White, and the UFC. But I guess it only makes sense that one of the most controversial careers in MMA also has a controversial ending.